Number 10. Nanny. First on our list today is the partner of the Orphan Maker, Nanny, a low-level telepath that paired up with the Orphan Maker as the two thought that the parents of mutant children were just straight up evil and ill-equipped to properly raise and protect their young mutants from danger. She and Orphan Maker traveled the world searching for young mutants to take care of, killing their parents to sever any family connections, and using her minor telepathic powers to control her new charges. Dubbed the Lost Boys and Lost Girls, these mutant orphans acted as her quote-unquote new children. Her first major mission was at the state home of foundlings in Omaha, a facility where Mr. Sinister kept many mutant children for observation and experimentation, and she was able to liberate them after escaping the grasp of the X-Men. Fast forward a bit and we see Nanny and the Orphan Maker attack the X-Men in Australia in order to quote-unquote save them. However, this led them to being overpowered and forced to flee to see another day. During the events of M-Day, just after decimation, we see Nanny resurface once more only to be defeated by Wolverine himself. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1988's X Factor, number 30. Number 9. Tusk. Not a whole lot is known about the early life of this Inhuman, and honestly not knowing how he turned out to be like this makes him just that little bit more terrifying. Tusk has the ability to grow in power and in size into this monstrous form, as well as the power to produce smaller versions of himself that can act independently thanks to a psychic link. Tusk served Apocalypse as one of the original recruits of the Riders of the Storm, which lasted for quite some time until Strife overpowered Apocalypse and the Riders served under him. Fast forward just a tad and we see the Dark Riders return when a lot of the mutant population began dying thanks to the effects of the Terrigen Mist. They went on a bit of a killing spree, getting rid of any mutant healer, believing that their powers were a violation of the natural order, and the reasoning behind that was that mutants had had their chance at survival, and that delaying their extinction was not the way to go about it. This caught the attention of Magneto and his X-Men, and the team set out to take down the Riders, succeeding after Magneto overpowered them and finished them off for good with some good old explosives. Check out Tusk's story starting with 1991's X Factor number 65. Number 8. Bulwark. Oswald Boglin was another X-Men villain that we don't know a whole lot about, especially when it comes to their backstory, but I mean hey, that's not the worst thing, it lets us speculate, and I for one love that. Bulwark had the ability to expand his muscle mass to unknown proportions, increasing his strength, durability, and resistance. He also wore these red leather bands all across his face and body, and it's assumed that this was done as a means of self-restraint to gauge the safe limit of his powers, as they would start to get a little bit tighter the bigger that he got. He was recruited by Emplet to join their team and torment Generation X, and that's honestly exactly what they did. The Hellions were successful in capturing the young mutants, but M had telepathically called for help, and it was answered by X-Men Bishop. M then took out all her frustrations on Bulwark, punching him through the school's biosphere, and then flying right after him. As he was about to attack M back, his muscles started to wither away, and knowing that he was defeated, he fled so that he could fight another day. Like many villains, Bulwark did not get a happy ending, as he was eventually captured by the revamped Weapon X program and was unfortunately killed. Give his story a read starting with 1996's Generation X, number 12. Number 7. Spore. Andrew Graves developed his unique mutation at a pretty young age. Now what was that mutation, you ask? Well, for starters, he had a very animal-like appearance, kinda like Bigfoot, but that's not all, because his real ability was that he was able to control people's moods and actions through pheromones. Growing up with an abusive father who forced his mother to kill herself, Andrew grew up with an intense hatred for humans, and began using his powers to make others turn on each other and kill each other. He eventually adopted the name Spore and became a member of the Acolytes, and as a member of the team, countless civilians and innocent people lost their lives. For a time, he was a prisoner of Excalibur as Dr. Rory Campbell wanted to cure Spore, but during the treatment, Rory's latent hatred of mutants got the better of him, and Spore manipulated Rory into an aggressive attack on him, which gave him the opportunity to escape. Sadly though, this escape wasn't permanent, as he eventually made his way back onto the island and was killed during a Sentinel attack. It was revealed later that Spore's motives for killing were a lot darker and sadder than we originally thought though. Spore just hated himself as much as other humans, and in his mind felt that killing humans was very wrong and that he therefore deserved to be killed himself. Check him out for yourself, starting with 1993's Uncanny X-Men, number 300. Number 6. Barrage. Another one of the original recruits of the Dark Riders of the Storm on this list today. If you're not familiar with Barrage, he had the ability to transform his forearms into organic weapons capable of collecting ambient energy, and then firing it into powerful explosive blasts. Barrage served as an agent of Apocalypse and seemed to follow him no matter what the task was given, as he was a part of the attack on X-Factor's ship and the attack on the Inhuman city on the moon. Alongside the other members of the Dark Riders, Barrage switched sides and served under Strife after he was able to best Apocalypse, and they defended Strife's moon base from the X-Men and mortally wounded the unfit Apocalypse in combat. After Strife's death, the Riders traveled the world challenging any and all mutants, killing Mesmero and even their own Synapse in the process, as they were too weak to even be considered worthy of living. Barrage was one of the few members of the Riders to survive the massacre by Wolverine because he actually wasn't a part of the team at the time. Honestly, lucky him. Fast forward a bit and the Dark Riders, including Barrage, embarked on a journey to kill mutant healers after a Terrigen mist cloud was spread throughout the world, endangering mutant kind, believing that the event was to be a test of strength so that only the strongest would survive. When they attacked the healer Shen Zorn, they were caught off guard by his display of ultimate power, which unfortunately cost Barrage his life. Check him out starting with 1991's X Factor number 65. Number 5. Whiteout. Now I'm really starting to sense a pattern here because extremely little is known about Whiteout and her past. A lot of it is just, assuming and speculation. We do know what her power is though. Whiteout possesses the superhuman ability to project a flash of blinding white light from her body. This light renders her opponents blind for approximately 1 minute, and for some unknown reason her power only affects victims that she chooses, and not everyone within the range, meaning it can be used very tactically. So like I said before, a lot of her past life is speculated, but it's assumed that she has resided in the Savage Land for some time, and it was there that she was recruited by the mutant Zaladane to join her forces of the Savage Land mutants. In her only known mission for Zaladane, Whiteout and the other Savage Land mutants attacked the X-Men in Chile while they were looking for Polaris. The X-Men defeated the Savage Land mutates pretty easily in this battle, and Whiteout presumably just fled. Check out more of her for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1989's Uncanny X-Men number 249. Number 4. Fever Pitch. Real name unknown, Fever Pitch was a very handsome young man until his mutant powers manifested and he accidentally destroyed his own face. Thanks to his mutant powers, his entire body is made of an organic flame that allows him to radiate intense heat, fly, and discharge and throw explosive plasma. As the years went by and his powers became stronger, he eventually burned through his entire body, leaving him nothing more but a fiery skeleton, which ultimately led him to becoming a member of the incarnation of Gene Nation, organized and led by the Dark Beast. Fever Pitch was seemingly killed on his first mission by Nate Gray after his energy was siphoned off, but he did later resurface in Berlin trying to capture Abyss so that he could sell him off to some researchers. Now skip ahead a little bit and we see Fever Pitch classified by the government as a national security threat, as he was one of the few mutants to keep his powers after the decimation of the mutant population. He was one of the many mutants to have a tracking chip implanted in his head before a trip into Salem Center. When the chip's true nature was discovered, he had it removed by Mr. M, who he followed when he led an exodus from the Institute. Fever Pitch was later captured by the anti-mutant group the Sapien League and was injected with a dose of the legacy virus, causing his powers to straight up overload, killing hundreds including himself. Check out his whole story starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1999's Generation X, number 50. Number 3. The Nasty Boys. Comprised of Mr. Sinister, Ruckus, Multiple Man, Slab, Gorgeous George, Hairbag, and Ramrod, the Nasty Boys were the strike force organized by Mr. Sinister to take down the X-Men. The Nasty Boys made their first appearance all together battling the X Factor after Slab initially attacked Strong Guy. After losing this battle, Sinister posed as Steven Shafran and unveiled his plan to kill the Scarlet Witch. Shafran, obviously upset, attempted to kill him only to be killed himself. During all that, Ramrod was also deported from the country but did make his way back, illegally. Needless to say, this is a very busy group. The team was later regrouped by Sinister and they hunted Malice, who was trying to kill Polaris, so that they couldn't remerge, and they didn't stop this hunt until Malice was apparently destroyed by Polaris herself and Havoc. A while later, the team decided to reform during the final days of mutant kind after X-Man's return that ended in the death of most of the X-Men. Now it was revealed to be a bait set up by the upstarts to lure out the remaining X-Men, which they were not aware of, and they were all promptly killed by the upstarts. Check out these nasty, nasty boys for yourself, starting with 1992's X Factor, number 75. Number 2. Forearm. Michael McCain, aka Forearm, was one of the founding members of the Mutant Liberation Front, a team of disillusioned and rebellious mutant youth. Now Michael is called Forearm for pretty obvious reasons, but I will explain his powers a bit for you anyways. He has 4 arms, hence, the name. And thanks to this mutation, he also possesses superhuman strength, stamina, and durability. Now one of their first missions under the leadership of Strife was to liberate the incarcerated New Mutants members Rusty and Skids, and the team broke them out of prison and the pair joined the MLF out of just straight up confusion. Skip ahead a bit and the MLF travels to Muir Island, where they meant to steal the legacy virus data, but while they were there, they learned about the Xavier protocols and decided to steal them instead. The team was confronted by Excalibur though, and they were quickly teleported away empty-handed. After a second attempt to steal the legacy virus, Forearm left the team as he felt betrayed by Moonstar, who revealed herself to be an undercover SHIELD agent. He later resurfaced as a part of a fighting championship in Madripoor called Bloodsport, where superpowered opponents fought to the death. However, in an unfortunate turn of events, Forearm was killed during a fight with former Serpent Society member Anaconda, who just broke his neck. Oddly enough though, he was somehow able to recover from death and made an appearance as a member of the MLF once more not too long after. Give his story a read starting with 1990's New Mutants number 86. And number 1, Executioner. Now with a name like Executioner, you can probably guess what this guy is all about. Carl Denty was a field agent for the FBI whose partner Fred Duncan was a member of Charles Xavier's underground who would cache the technological equipment that the X-Men confiscated from alien races. After his partner's death, Carl inherited all of the equipment and decided that mutants had caused way too much damage in the world, so he donned a lot of the equipment and started calling himself the Executioner, beginning his quest to punish mutants who had not been legally convicted of their crimes. Starting off with killing the mutant tower, Denty quickly teleported away once the X-Men arrived on the scene to stop him, but he was smart and decided to teleport to the X-Mansion to kill the comatose Emma Frost. However, he wasn't smart enough because he was still stopped by Cyclops and Cable. Now none of that deterred him though, because he still continues his mission of punishing mutants. However, for a while he actually did some good as he teamed up with the Punisher in Washington DC to protect the pro-mutant activist Reverend James Conover from the Mutant Liberation Front. This act landed him the position of potential recruit for the initiative. However, who knows if he was ever actually on that team, because that was one of the last times we saw him. Check out his story for yourself, starting with 1993's Uncanny X-Men Annual, number 1993.
Number 10, Bishop. Bishop's powers are based in energy manipulation, as so many other heroes from his time period were. And no, I don't mean the future, I mean the time in which he was created in the comics. The 90s. What a time. Still, Lucas Bishop is one of the few heroes who withstood the test of time and is currently a main character in the comics today, appearing as part of the Marauders team and as Red Queen Kitty Pryde's Red Bishop within the Hellfire Trading Company. I'm so happy that Bishop got to be a bishop. It's too perfect. It's so perfect. Bishop is considered an alpha level mutant and is often known for brandishing his future XSE guns, which he can recharge with any energy he has absorbed and stored. Pretty useful. We're talking near unlimited ammo, as long as he has some kind of energy coming his way. Number 9, Wolverine, aka Laura Kinney, formerly known as X-23. Laura has since taken up the mantle of Wolverine after her genetic father Logan. She too is now known as Wolverine, so we get to have 2 of them on the island of Krakoa. Yay! Just like that, they gave Laura that title, but didn't feel like they had to take it away from her after Logan himself was using it again in his own self-titled series. It feels very respectful to let her keep it. Also, Laura definitely deserves our respect, as she is not only extremely durable like Logan, possessing her own healing factor, but is also an immensely skilled and deadly fighter, who you would likely not want to mess with, being trained since birth. Wolverine is currently part of the newest X-Men roster, featured in the 2021 book, but has also been an ally and member here and there throughout the years. And before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to show up by clicking that like, and we've got a little announcement for you. We have a new channel coming your way. What? It is called Top 10 Nerd Elite, and if you want all that good bonus content, you need to go over there and you need to subscribe. Number 8, Sync. Everett Thomas just recently saw an amazing power boost in the comics. So amazing in fact that it actually took me forever to collect the issue in which it was featured, issue 18 of the previous X-Men run from 2019. Don't worry though, I finally tracked it down, so my collection as such is complete. Perfect. And honestly, I get why it was such a highly coveted issue. It also features Sync's rainbow aura that shines through when he is using his ability and syncing up with other mutants. Up until recently, Sync's powers gave him the ability to temporarily take on the powers of mutants near him, syncing up with them. But as of issue 18, he can now sync up with any superhuman being. And it's also been implied before that with more experience, he could take on the powers of others for longer and perhaps even permanently. Number 7, Wolverine. He's the best there is at what he does, bub. So of course Logan has to make our cut. Wolverine is one of the most popular mutants and X-Men members out there the world over, which gives him a pretty big boost when it comes to what he's capable of. Wolverine might not be Omega or even Alpha level, but he never backs down from a fight, and is not to be underestimated, as he's probably one of the most determined and often noble heroes around. Sure, you might be able to beat him initially, but due to his insane healing factor, Wolverine will often just get back up and keep coming back for more. He's also a super skilled fighter. On more than one occasion, he's taken a bullet to the head and after a few moments managed to recover and get right back up. In alternate realities, we've also seen Wolverine bombarded with energy blasts until he was nothing more than a skeleton, and he still managed to come back from that. Wolverine is tough as nails, but with a heart of gold, which is what makes him such a great X-Men member and just an overall great character. Number 6, Polaris. Polaris is the daughter of Magneto, and with that comes a lot of power and honestly probably a lot of pressure as well. Still, Lorna handles the pressure fairly well and all the other stuff that comes with being Magneto's daughter, like her mind being manipulated when she was a child. Okay, so maybe she didn't handle that whole reveal so great, but she definitely shows just how resilient she can be whenever she has to deal with some of the more challenging parts of being Magneto's heir. Polaris' powers are similar to her father's, allowing her to manipulate magnetic fields, and she is considered an alpha-level mutant. More recently in the comics, while using her abilities and with the help of Krakoa, she built the X-Factor's new headquarters on the Mutant Island nation all in one night. Pretty impressive stuff. Number 5. Juggernaut. Juggernaut is one of the most powerful characters out there in the comics, and while he might not be a mutant, and is known for being in fact a longtime X-Men villain, neither of these things stopped him from eventually joining the team. This was all around the time that Juggy had lost most of his powers, with Kane having a falling out with Sidorak, and ultimately deciding to patch things up with his stepbrother Charles Xavier. He joined the X-Men, and during his time there surprisingly made a good number of friends, including the mutant known as Squid Boy. Poor Squid Boy. R.I.P. Who would attempt to blow the whistle when he found Kane in a meeting with the Brotherhood. Kane actually was operating as a mole, hoping to play along long enough to learn of the Brotherhood of Mutants' plans and warn the X-Men of them. Such a tragic story! Number 4. Magneto. Magneto obviously has to make our cut. Despite being a powerful X-Men villain, like Juggernaut, he too has been an ally to the team and even at one point was a member. Magneto had a few instances where he worked alongside the X-Men and even at one point saved them from imprisonment. He eventually attempted to join up with them, but was initially denied membership by Professor X. Later, however, Magneto would ally himself with the team during their time together on Battleworld, and eventually would end up joining the team and acting as a leader of sorts after Professor X was injured. During his time on the team, Magneto would also become the teacher of the New Mutants, which I love. Number 3. Storm. Storm is of course one of the most powerful mutants out there, and definitely one of the most powerful X-Men members. Not just for her amazing powers either, but also for her skills as a leader and a fighter. Recently during the pre-Hellfire Gala issue of Marauders, in honor of their valuable teammate Storm, the Marauders came together to share their favorite Storm stories and moments. We also learned just how dangerous Storm can be even without her powers, and as awesome as she is with them, I think some of my favorite Storm moments recently have actually involved her fighting hand to hand, or with her famous and perhaps endless supply of knives. We still don't really know for sure how many knives Storm has on her at all times. At the very least, we know it's 8 though. And if you want to check out that very heavy Storm issue of Marauders, you can check it out in issue 20. Number 2. Marvel Girl. Marvel Girl is one of the greatest and most powerful X-Men members out there, and really no powerful X-Men members list can be complete without her. Sadly, sort of, as I did want Storm to take my number 1 spot on this list, honestly. I was really like, I really want to make Storm number 1. Jean Grey has done a lot of good and a lot of bad, but whatever side she happens to be on as Marvel Girl, Phoenix, or Dark Phoenix, the fact remains that she's always pretty unstoppable. Unless, of course, she wants to be stopped. Even back when she was originally introduced in the comics, back in issue number 1 of the Uncanny X-Men, she stood out, at least to me, as having the most potential in terms of her powers and power levels. Of course, then she'd later succumb to a bit of Princess Peach syndrome, as she would constantly be the member of the team who'd get kidnapped or in some cases be rendered useless because of the limits of how much she could mentally lift being tied to how much she could physically lift, which I don't know, doesn't seem like it should be a thing, but it was a thing at the time. Though later on her limitations could probably be explained away by the mental blocks Xavier had placed in Jean's mind to protect her and others from her insane raw power, which we'd learn about later, of course. And friends, if you also love Jean Grey as much as we love Jean Grey, we also have a really awesome Jean Grey alternates list, so if you want to learn about more powerful versions of her, you should go check that out. It's a good time. Number 1. Tempest. Just because it's hard for me to always succumb to Jean being number 1. Even though I know she deserves it, I know she's number 1, we have Tempest at her number 1 spot today. Because Tempest could literally undo anyone just like that. Like she did with Matthew Malloy, who is set up to be pretty much the most powerful mutant in all of existence, I'd say. His reality manipulation was off the charts. And yet Tempest was able to defeat him by traveling back in time to make sure his parents just never met. Her ability allows her to create time bubbles in which she can control the flow of time. She can slow or speed up time as much as she wants within the bubbles, and can also use her chronokinesis powers to time travel. Time travel initially for Tempest was a little tricky, as her emotions have been shown to affect her abilities, but she has also spent years working to hone them. So at this point in time, she's definitely someone you wouldn't want to piss off. Otherwise, you might go to bed one night and then never wake up again, because Tempest decided to erase you from existence.
Coming in right at number 10 is Richter. Julio Richter has a pretty interesting mutant power. Richter can manipulate various aspects of the planet itself. Originally, his powers manifested in simple seismic energy, allowing him to create earthquakes, shock waves, and rudimentary transport of Earth matter. However, after Richter's powers evolved, he now has the ability to remotely terraform the ground around him in a much more precise manner. He can toss rocks around with precision or will the ground to open up like a tunnel. But he also has some skill with plants, controlling vines and other plants to ensnare his opponents. Julio also gained magma kinesis after being trapped under an active volcano and just rising out of it, riding on top of the magma like an absolute badass. More impressive than that though is that Richter's powers have created a psychic / empathic bond between himself and the primal life force of Earth's biosphere, allowing him some clairvoyance and mysticism. Definitely one of the coolest characters I have never heard of. I just wanted to pause here to say if you're enjoying this list so far, dropping a like is all you have to do to help us out and let us know that this is what you want to see. And on that note, we're gonna get to number 9, who is Gorgeous George. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and when I behold George Blair, gorgeous is not the word that comes to mind, but nonetheless that is the name he holds. Gorgeous George's body is composed of this tar or putty-like stuff that through his thoughts can be expanded, morphed, and reshaped in any way he wants. Using this ability, he has been able to turn his entire body into a puddle or make himself extremely slippery to avoid capture. Side note, becoming extra slippery just makes me like ick, you know? I don't like that slipperiness. George is also very hard to injure. He can reconstitute parts of his body and can even bend to dodge attacks. The slippery thing also kind of helps with this as well. He has also once tried to choke Strong Guy by using his powers to enter his lungs, which is just a terrifying thought. On a lighter note though, his arms are actually longer than normal because he forgot their normal length after getting drunk with other members of Mr. Sinister's Nasty Boys. Well, that's kind of cool. Number 8 is Strong Guy. I kind of can't believe I haven't talked about Guido Carosella yet. Despite this guy's massive hulking appearance, he is one of the most entertaining mutants around. Essentially, Guido, who goes by the name Strong Guy, has the ability to absorb kinetic energy and use it to enhance his physical strength. Now at a base level, he can lift around 50 tons, which is already more than a lot of superpowered beings. But using his kinetic absorption, he can boost that strength up to far above 100 tons, making him one of the strongest characters in Marvel Comics. Unfortunately, Guido's body suffers from his mutation. Storing the kinetic energy he absorbs for more than 90 seconds will permanently distort his body in very painful ways. The distortions he's already suffering from cause him to be in constant pain, which, being the great guy he is, pushed him towards being absolutely hilarious to hide his pain. Hey y'all, if you love the manga, if you love the anime, well then make sure to check out Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. James is an awesome host bringing you videos just like this one, but with that manga and anime setting. You should definitely check it out. Number 7, Thumbelina. Are you getting tired of seeing all these super-powered beings who look like they just walked off a runway? Well, lucky for you, there is Christina Anderson, who goes by the moniker of Thumbelina. She's short, she's stout, she's slow, and she's always being made fun of. But she has a pretty useful mutant ability. Thumbelina can shrink down to 1/4 of an inch, making her an excellent candidate for missions of espionage with the Mutant Liberation Front. The best part about Thumbelina's powers though is that she retains her full-size strength in her miniature size and has even been shown to actually increase in strength as she shrinks. So make fun of her all you want, but Thumbelina has proved instrumental to the Mutant Liberation Front team, even being the reason their first mission was such a success. And coming off of that, number 6 is Layla Miller. Of all the mutant powers I've come across, Resurrection is one that doesn't actually happen too often. But Layla's Resurrection ability is an interesting one. It comes with a major side note. Layla has the ability to resurrect dead beings, restoring their bodies and their consciousness, but not their soul. Without their soul, the resurrected being will have no conscience or morality. We saw this happen both with Strong Guy and Trevor Fitzroy, who were resurrected by Layla, who eventually experienced drastic changes in their personality without their souls. Another key factor about this resurrection is that it can only be performed within minutes of the individual's death. Layla claims she can also reverse this process, taking back the life that she gives. Another interesting note for Layla is that during the House of M, Layla was resistant to Wanda's reality warping abilities and retained all of her memories. She could even give others back their memories. She's also been to the future and studied magic with Dr. Doom, so like, that's cool as well. Coming in at number 5 is M. Just the letter M. Monet St. Croix has an interesting past, and honestly, her family is a big part of that. Her brother is an incredibly powerful bad dude who trapped her in a different form where she is known as Penance. As Penance, she has diamond skin, a telepathic resistance, and super sharp claws. M can even combine with her younger siblings Claudette and Nicole, but on her own, Monet is essentially a near perfect being. All of her physical and mental skills are greater than the natural physical limits of peak humans, granting her super strength, speed, agility, stamina, senses, intuition, and a genius level intellect, as well as reflexes that even allow her to catch bullets. She can fly at supersonic speeds by sheer force of will, she can read minds, project her thoughts into the minds of others, and defensively mask her mind against telepathic intrusion, and she has even displayed some telekinesis. And on top of all that, she has the power of being ridiculously good looking. Lucky. Number 4, Marius St. Croix. I could talk about Monet St. Croix for a long time, but her brother, he is just terrifying and needs to be discussed. Marius, who eventually goes by the name M-Plate, has the ability to siphon mutant energy by feeding on the bone marrow of mutants using his super creepy feeder mouths that appear on the palms of his hands. M-Plate needs the energy from mutants in order to survive, almost like a mutant vampire. And like a vampire, if Marius siphons all of a person's energy, his victims will pass away. Also like a vampire, if M-Plate drains only part of a victim's energy, he can gain a kind of psychic control over their mind, and can cause the mutant to become an energy vampire just like him, but under his control. Kind of like a vampire's familiar. Interestingly, when feeding from a victim, he actually cancels out their powers and copies them for himself. After multiple feedings, he even gains their power permanently, like he did with Penance's diamond skin. And at number 3 is Chamber. Chamber, or Jonathan Evans Starsmore, discovered his powers when a blast of psionic energy burst from his torso, destroying much of his chest and his face. It turns out that Chamber is actually literally composed of that same psionic energy, and his body just acts as a shell for it. When his powers burst out of him, the wound was replaced by a constant glow of psionic fire, leaving him unable to speak. Instead, he can only communicate telepathically. Additionally, he does not eat, drink, or even breathe, as he has no organs. Chamber constantly created and unleashed psionic charges of energy that could strike with a volatile force, being projected as a blast from his chest, a series of guided streams that struck specific targets, or as a massive eruption striking in all directions. Now, if he was given the time to train properly, Chamber could have potentially been one of the most powerful mutants to walk the earth, but unfortunately he's not. Number 2, Mikhail Rasputin. As the older brother of both Colossus and Magic, Mikhail Rasputin has quite the mutant genealogy, and he ain't no chump himself. Mikhail is an alpha level mutant with the ability to manipulate subatomic matter and warp energy. His power hasn't really been properly defined, but he could forcibly fuse a man to a tree and could manipulate Bobby Drake, Iceman's body. Speaking of Iceman, Mikhail also seemed to display some form of enhanced perception, being able to see Bobby's potential just by looking at him, and he could show him how to use his powers in better ways. Mikhail has also used his power to fire energy blasts, tamper with people's powers, and most prominently for teleportation. He could transport himself as well as others by opening up dimensional portals particles by ripping away at the subatomic wall of space, which he did when the Soviets sent him into space and blew up his ship. Sorry. And coming in at number 1 is Sienna Blaze. Sienna Blaze has incredibly strong destructive abilities thanks to the fact that Sienna can disrupt a planet's electromagnetic energy spectrum, absorbing the energy into her body and then releasing it, usually in destructive blasts. Sienna's released energy would tear a hole in the local electromagnetic field, which is bad, in case you wondered, with repeated use of her powers theoretically being able to destroy the planet. She can also use the magnetic energy to fly at 150 miles per hour, or impressively to teleport herself along the planet's electromagnetic field. Again, every time she teleports, she permanently damages the electromagnetic field at the point of departure, causing a pretty strong explosion. As an example, Sienna shot down the X-Men's Blackbird in Antarctica. Sienna then ambushed Cyclops and Storm and nearly completely took them out until Professor X prevented her from using her powers. Then Storm, Cyclops, and Professor X managed to defeat Sienna, except she just teleported away and left a massive explosion in her stead.
Number 10. Ink. Not all X-Men members are mutants, and Ink is one prime example. Ink actually did believe he was a mutant initially, and so did the rest of the X-Men, until we learned that his tattoo artist was actually the mutant in this scenario. Through his mutant tattoo artist, Ink has different tattoos, and each give him a different power. He has even managed to channel the powers of the Phoenix Force before through a Phoenix tat, which was over his eye. Basically, with Ink, he can have any power that his tattoo artist, Leon Nunez, gives him. We haven't seen him for a while, but he was listed in the Ten of Swords event handbook as being an active member of the X-Men. So we can assume he's somewhere on Krakoa, mostly chilling probably, but still available to use his tattoos and his powers when needed. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to let us know, because I want to do a part 3. I got a lot of mutants, and I want to talk to you about them. We also have a new channel, it's called Top 10 Nerd Elite, and you need to go check it out and subscribe for all of the good bonus content. We're gonna have lots of exciting things on there, so go subscribe now and be ready. Number 9. Gambit. Gambit might not be the most powerful mutant on this list, and may sometimes be more of a background member of the team in terms of what he's up to or just in terms of fighting, but he has a lot of potential. We've seen alternate realities where the full potential of Gambit's powers were realized, putting him at an almost god level in terms of what he was actually capable of. Gambit's powers allow him to supercharge objects with kinetic energy, causing them to explode through accelerating the molecules that make up said object. He can do this to something small or something large, but the bigger the object, the longer it can take for him to charge it. He has, however, proven how dangerous he can be, even just by charging smaller objects that can get up close to vital areas, such as your face and your neck, like necklaces or earrings. Boom. I would not want him to supercharge any of the object close to my face. None of my pins, please. They're like right over my heart. Yikes. Number 8. Cyclops. Not just powerful because of his optic blasts, but Cyclops also brings the power of his amazing tactical and leadership skills, which also adds to his power and makes him a more valuable X-Men member. I actually also just got a really cool, I just ordered like a Cyclops pin. It's gonna have his optic blast like going outside of the border of the pin. I'm so excited for it to arrive. Initially in the comics, when Cyclops first appeared, he was also made out to be the most powerful member of the team, with his optic blast being considered to be one of the most useful powers when it came to fighting enemies. At least that's what it seemed like. Every time they had someone really strong, they're like, Cyclops, use your optic blasts! Or initially they didn't call them optic blasts, but that's what we call them now, so. Cyclops is also a master of trigonometry and knows how to fire an optic blast to hit just about anything due to his insane math skills. That's truly mathematical. Number 7. Kate Pryde. Kitty Pryde, as she was once known, or Shadow Cat, is an immensely powerful mutant who can make herself and others intangible. As such, Kate proves to be a very skilled fighter when integrating her abilities into her fighting styles. She's also a protege of Wolverine's, and you can definitely see that when it comes to some of her fighting skills and some of her moves. Kate now also holds a position of power on Krakoa, being a member of the Hellfire Trading Company and allying herself with Emma Frost, the White Queen, in becoming the Red Queen of that company. Due to her unique abilities, Kate is unable to use Krakoan gates, and this is almost something that caused her to be unable to emerge from her pod when being resurrected after dying in the comics. Kate can phase people and objects and has managed to phase a giant bullet through the earth, saving all life on it, and while Power Boost also phased an entire planet through an amber casing. Number 6. Professor X, or just X as he's sometimes known now. Professor X has always been thought of as one of the most powerful members of the X-Men. He was the first leader and teacher of the team who not only pushed his mutants to be better, sometimes controversially so, but also showed up initially to save the day when an opponent proved to be too challenging for the heroic youngsters. Professor X can also shut off your brain, he can make you forget who you are, so he's definitely not someone you'd want to fight. Unless you got a really strong mind, I guess. Professor X has low-level telekinetic skills and powerful telepathic skills that allow him to manipulate, alter, and probe the minds of others, as well as communicate telepathically from a great distance and sense other mutants. He also is now pretty much permanently wearing Cerebro, so he's got a pretty big boost to his power levels, also acting as the important Google Drive of sorts for the mutant minds on Krakoa, so that if they die, he can use a backup of their mind to resurrect them. So he's pretty important. Number 5. Iceman. Of course Iceman has to make our cut this time around. Bobby has had such a glow up when it comes to his powers and what he's capable of since he first appeared in the comics. At one point he managed to create a flash freeze so powerful that he successfully temporarily froze over all of hell, or a version of hell at least. It's kinda hard to tell in Marvel Comics sometimes. He's also managed to change states, allowing him to travel vast distances quickly as he moves through and as water. He can also manipulate water as well as ice and snow. Not only that, but he's managed to use his powers to create clone-like life forms, creating ice or snow clones to aid him and his allies in battle. Iceman has come a long way from being a snowman lookalike sporting his little black booties in his early days. I do miss those black booties though. Where they at? Number 4. Rogue. Rogue is definitely one of the most powerful mutants out there. She also happens to be one of my all-time favorites. Something about wanting to be closer to people but always kind of feeling like you were so removed from them or had to for some reason keep your distance. The idea of like guarding yourself. Those feelings of isolation just really spoke to me, and honestly still sometimes do. Although it should be noted that Rogue has since come much more into her own, with her gaining more control over her power, meaning that she is no longer as burdened with having to worry about hurting those she cares for. Rogue's powers allow her to absorb the powers and even memories of others through touch, and abilities too, so it's not just like superhuman people that she can take the skills of. She can take on multiple powers at once, but the setback is that her touch can also drain the life force energy of whoever she makes contact with. I mean, drawback and a plus in some cases. It turns out that the loss of control of her powers came from a very real place for most of us. Her own fear of being close to people, of intimacy, and of acceptance. For Rogue, she just had to make the choice to accept herself and not be afraid, and it was through that self-realization, that basically therapeutic work, that she was able to take control of her abilities. So if you see her making out with Gambit a ton in the comics recently, that's why. And if you see Rogue coming your way, you don't have to be afraid. Unless you're one of the baddies, of course. And then be afraid. And probably run. Number 3. Moira X. Moira X is also known to many of us still by the name Moira McTaggart. Though it was unknown for many years, Moira herself is a mutant. She was thought to be a human member and ally to the X-Men for many years, but in House of X it was revealed that Moira is actually a mutant whose power is reincarnation. But not in the traditional sense of reincarnation. After Moira dies, she doesn't just come back to life as like a new person, she lives her life all over again from the beginning. According to Destiny, Moira will likely only live through 10 lives, perhaps 11 if she makes the right plays, meaning that she isn't immortal, but she does bring with her to each life more and more knowledge in terms of how events can play out, which has brought us to the life and reality that she exists in today, with the fantastically powerful mutant island nation of Krakoa. Krakoa basically would not exist without Moira, which to me seems pretty powerful. All that knowledge. And I see her with Destiny's journals. What is she doing? What's going on? Number 2. Kid Omega. Kid Omega is Quentin Quire, another very feasible Phoenix Force host. Despite being younger and somewhat less experienced, and the running gag at the beginning of the Dawn of X era where he'd pretty much die each issue, he is still considered to be extremely powerful. Quentin is an Omega level telepath and telekinetic. He is also hyper intelligent due to his capacity to think at high speeds and the way his mind organizes thoughts. He can accomplish feats that not even the immensely powerful mutant Rachel Summers could manage, which is pretty impressive. Rachel Summers is also pretty powerful. Rachel Summers should also be on one of these lists. Number 1. Vulcan. Vulcan is pretty insanely powerful, and in a dangerous way too, because he's so capable of evil due to being manipulated during his time in the Vault. In fact, in Empire we saw a fraction likely of what his darker side was capable of when he ran into the Kotati while out for a walk on the blue area of the moon, where the Summers house is located. He attempted to deal with the situation peacefully when he approached them, showing mercy initially, but when provoked his darker side was unleashed, causing him to kill everyone save one member of the Kotati, who was left basically traumatized, uncontrollably uttering the word Krakoa on repeat. Vulcan is believed to be beyond even Omega levels when it comes to his powers. What are some of your favorite mutants? Who do you think— wait, what? Who? As though they're objects. What mutants do you like? Chair, desk, table?
Coming in at number 10, we have Rays. I love when we start getting alternate universe stuff because that's when things really get crazy. You can mix and match and get all sorts of super combinations that you want. And in this case, we have Wolverine and Mystique getting busy and making a baby that has both their powers. Rays is the combination of two heroes to make one of the best spies of all time. Because the thing about Mystique is you can break into almost anywhere because of your ability to shapeshift, but you're at high risk of getting killed because you don't have any sort of protection outside of your hand-to-hand combat and skills with weapons. But then you mix in Wolverine's healing factor and some razor sharp claws, and you have a soldier who can sneak into any place and take out the competition like no one else on the squad. While Rays might not be the most powerful mutant of all time, you can't deny the utility and subtlety that someone like Rays could bring to the table. I don't know if Rays is a fitting enough name for someone who can sneak around and kill someone with claws. They should be called Badger, or Sneaky Badger, or Mongoose.
Number 9. Chimera. Chimera is the daughter of Storm from the alternate Earth of 13729. The same reality that Rays hails from, actually, weirdly enough. The identity of Chimera's father has never been confirmed, but many believe that she's the daughter of Storm's frequent love interest, Black Panther, which would be pretty cool, and I think is what we all want to happen here. We don't normally get to see what these two's future children would look or be like, so yeah. Chimera is a mutant like her mother and first appeared in Wolverine in the X-Men issue 36. She was created by Jason Aaron and Ed McGuinness, and she possesses telepathic powers which allow her to communicate with and influence animals. She's also an expert tracker, which implies to me that she's either the daughter of Black Panther or possibly also of Wolverine. A reality where Wolverine is kids with both Mystique and Storm though seems really intense, so I'll just leave that in your mind.
And before we get into our next point, just give this video a big thumbs up because that really helps us out, guys. Coming in at number 8, we have Megan Frost. I don't know what it is with Scott Summers, but it seems that he has a thing for telepaths, or they have a thing for him. I'm not sure which way the pendulum swings, but either way, he has a few kids via telepaths. This time, it would be him and Emma Frost who would hook up and make Megan Frost. Megan comes to the table with a host of powers from her parents. She's got her dad's psionic blast, and she's got her mama's telepathy. She also has a host of telekinetic powers, so it would seem that Scott Summers might have some hidden telekinetic powers in his genes because his other kids do as well. Now on the downside, Megan didn't get her mom's diamond skin, which is one of her most legendary powers, but she makes up for this by training hard in hand-to-hand combat to the level where she could knock out anyone who might be able to sneak by her telepathy and get within punching range.
Number 7. Rogue. Rogue is the daughter of Mystique and Destiny. Well, adopted daughter anyways, but they were both definitely more influential in the raising of Rogue than our own biological parents, so I consider them more of her parents than her actual parents, I guess? They are her actual parents. That's it. Before she ran away as a teenager, Rogue was raised in a hippie commune by her father and aunt after her mother disappeared. After she'd left, she ended up being approached by Mystique, who was told to seek her out by her long-term partner, Destiny. Rogue joined the two of them and they raised her like their own daughter. While Rogue is super awesome and powerful, Mystique is rarely associated with the X-Men, which is why Rogue ranks so low on this list. Basically, she's paying for her mother's generally more villainous tendencies, which has also factored into her story in the comics many times before. Poor Rogue, and also honestly, poor Mystique.
Coming in at number 6, we have X-23, the most famous child of Wolverine, and certainly one of the most deadly. X-23, also known as Laura Kinney, is the clone of Wolverine, but also kind of his daughter. It's a little bit of a weird backstory. She's a clone, but she wasn't grown in a tube like most clones are, or I think they are. I don't know a lot about science. But she was actually grown in someone's womb, so that pretty much makes her a baby like any other baby, but she was for sure a clone. Are you confused? It's comic books, that's just how things are sometimes. But she's got all of her dad's daddy's powers, and she can cut you down faster than a Vitamix blender. She can show that she can be a prolific Wolverine replacement, since after Logan dies, she steps into the role as the new Wolverine and starts taking dudes out just like her old pa. And something very interesting about this character is that the first time she showed up, it wasn't actually in comics, but it was in the TV show called X-Men Evolution, which was about a bunch of teenage versions of the X-Men all going to school together and having school problems, you know, and school stuff.
Number 5. Shogo. Shogo Lee is the son of Jubilee, and while he might just be a baby currently, he's still been a powerhouse recently in the comics. Shogo was adopted by Jubilee after he was orphaned by a meteor strike. Sounds random, but it actually tied into stuff. Anyways, for Jubilee, adopting Shogo was very important and a big part of her growing up as a character. As far as we know, Shogo is not immune like his mom, but he did have some pretty cool powers while in Otherworld. His imagination combined with fairy magic granted him the ability to turn into a dragon while in Otherworld. A mother freaking dragon. A dragon. So yeah, he is basically a dragon whenever he's there in Otherworld, which makes him pretty powerful while on those planes. Saturnine herself also took a shining to him, and he was instrumental during the fight at the end of the Ten of Swords event.
Coming in number 4, we have Cable. I mean, how do we make a list of children of X-Men and even think about leaving out Cable? Cable is the son of Scott Summers, better known as Cyclops, and the very powerful telepath Madeline Pryor, who's the evil clone of Jean Grey. See, Scott thought he was gonna have a baby with Jean, but it was a trick! There's so many tricky babies in comic books. Well, they had a baby, and that baby became insanely powerful, one of the most powerful telepaths, and then he becomes a skilled soldier, and then he goes back in time to work with his dad and sometimes against his dad. It's a very complicated situation. He also gets some sort of technovirus put into him, and it makes it harder for him to use his powers because he has to constantly use his mind to fight off the technovirus. And he gets cloned, and his clone is evil and has no virus. And he's buddies with Deadpool. The two of them work together in a straight man stooge double act kind of thing.
Number 3. Polaris. While some might think of Magneto as more of a villain and therefore not one of the X-Men, he has been a member on and off throughout his history and has even led teams both within and without the main continuity. His daughter Lorna Dane and himself have one of the most strained relationships of all of the X-Men and their kids. This has been highlighted recently and ultimately comes down to the fact that initially Magneto manipulated Lorna, keeping the truth of him being her father from her. Not a great start. Even when that fact was revealed to her, he still hadn't been the best dad, and Polaris has even called him out on this before in the comics, reminding him that he doesn't even really know her. Eesh. Still, the two teaming up together are able to perform some pretty powerful feats as both share the power of magnetism.
Coming in number 2, we have Legion. If you're Professor X's kid, you know you're going to be extremely powerful, and you would think you would be raised by the perfect dad and have one of the best fathers around. Well, even though Xavier is good at raising kids that he has no blood connection to, he isn't that good at making a strong connection with his own son. Part of it is just bad parenting, and the other part is Legion is a lot to deal with even for the most powerful, responsible, and well-adjusted parents on the planet. See, Legion isn't just one mutant. He has split personalities that live in his body, and each one of them has their own mutation. So Legion can switch from personality to personality and change his power. That's a pretty serious combination of abilities that probably work really well together. Well, here's the thing. You don't need his powers to work together because several of these mutants are Omega level. And when I say several, I mean around 200. And even the ones that aren't strong enough to wipe out existence itself, which Legion has done more than once, they are still strong enough to create an amazing storm of chaos. And there are new powers and personalities being created all the time inside Legion's body. Rogue was inside Legion's mind once, and she said there were over 1,000 personalities with new ones being born.
Number 1. Daken. Daken is definitely one of the most iconic X-Men kids, I believe. Although, obviously X-23 is also up there. I'm sorry that I just dissed her by putting Daken above her. And he's a really well-known X-Men kid despite the fact that he has major daddy issues. Daken is now all grown up and is currently part of the X-Factor team, but he has been all over the place when it comes to his alignment since he was first introduced in the comics in Wolverine Origins issue number 10. We've seen him as both a villain working against his father, even trying to kill him. We've seen him take on the Punisher alongside the Dark Avengers, acting as Osborn's assassin. We've seen him tangle even with the likes of Deadpool and be manipulated by the lovable and very unstable Mirth, but he's also acted heroically from time to time, and now seems to be more on the side of those things with X-Factor. Though, then again, Krakoa is a place for all mutants, so it's not like him being a bad boy would ever mean that he'd get kicked off the team. And when it comes to mutant bad boys, Daken is definitely one of the baddest. I need to do a mutant bad boy list so I can put him at the top. Number 10, Kid Omega. Some people don't like to count the West Coast Avengers, but I certainly do. They're just so fun. Of course, one of the recruits on this team is none other than fan favorite Kid Omega, aka Quentin Quire, the character who has a habit of dying repeatedly on Krakoa currently as part of the Dawn of X line. Kid Omega joined up with Kate Bishop's West Coast Avengers at the beginning of Kelly Thompson's run in 2018. This run, by the way, is just wacky and delightful, and if you have yet to check it out yet, I highly recommend it. Number 9, Deadpool. If you talk to Wade, he'd consider himself a member, or at the very least former member, of the X-Men. He'd be wrong, but that's how he would likely see it, so for that I'm gonna count him. And there was a time, however, when he did at least appear to hold a probationary status with them, when Cyclops thought it might be better to keep a closer eye on Wilson, who wanted to join up at the time, rather than let him besmirch the name of mutants everywhere with his unchecked actions. That of course didn't last very long, but he has also been a member of the mutant team X-Force. When it comes to joining the Avengers, he's been on a few different Avengers teams. One of his most recent appearances was when he joined Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel's War Avengers in War of the Realms. He's also been a member of Steve Rogers' Captain America's all-new, all-different Avengers, and I don't really know how much more Avengery it gets than serving under Captain America. Avengery, is that a word? It's not, but it is now. Number 8, Cannonball. Cannonball was recruited to the Avengers after the events of Avengers vs. X-Men. Captain America felt during those events the Avengers had in a way let their mutant friends down and could have done more to help them. In an attempt to move past this former conflict and foster more community and trust between the two superhero groups, he recruited Cannonball along with Sunspot to join the Avengers. I always feel like Sunspot makes more of a splash, so I thought it might be nice to also acknowledge Sam's appearance here as a character and often underrated mutant hero. Sam has not only worked alongside the X-Men team, but is also one of the founding members of the New Mutants team as well. Ka-ching! Number 7, X-23. While Laura Kinney may not have been part of the main Avengers team, she was part of the Avengers Academy. She joined up after the events of Fear itself, and during her time there bested Tigra in a sparring match, proving even more so that X-23 would make a deadly addition to the Avengers team someday, should they ever want to recruit her on a more permanent level. X-23, currently known as Wolverine, is a genetic female clone of Logan, created using his genetic material and that of her own creator and birth mother, Sarah Kinney. Laura was raised to be a killing machine, a skillful trained assassin, but ended up escaping the facility and company who raised and used her. Since finding Logan, her genetic father in a way, and the X-Men, she has served on multiple different heroic mutant teams. Number 6, Havoc. Havoc was one of the members of the Uncanny Avengers, composed of a weird mishmash of characters, mutants and non-mutants alike, who initially united to take down the superpowered Red Skull, now armed with the mind of Charles Xavier. Havoc joined the team in the first issue of the series, despite being a conflicting character when it came to his usually unstable alignment. Havoc has been on both sides of the spectrum, being a hero at times and a villain at others, and sometimes he just gets lost in between the two labels, like he appears to be currently in the comics, on the brink of almost losing his sanity. Poor Havoc. Honestly, so much terrible things have happened to Alex, and I just feel really bad for him. His time starting out with the X-Men was also initially pretty traumatic during the time he spent avoiding joining Xavier's school or team. However, eventually he did end up acquiescing and joining them, happy there for a time before Madeline Pryor came around and, well, corrupted him. Number 5, Magneto. For those who think Magneto is just an evil mutant who is born enemy to the X-Men, he has also spent quite a bit of time working alongside them as well. Most notably, Magneto was actually a leader of the New Mutants team while working alongside the X-Men. Despite the fact that he and Charles haven't always seen eye to eye, even Professor X knows that Eric can be a powerful ally. So, how did he make his way onto the Avengers? Well, this of course happened during the Axis event. After many major heroes had their alignments inverted, Magneto was one of the superpowered now heroes to be recruited into that temporary, technically non-official Avengers team. Number 4, Rogue. Rogue joined the Uncanny Avengers in issue number 4 of the 2012 series. She would become the field leader for the Avengers Unity Division. She was first approached by Wanda Maximoff, aka Scarlet Witch, who asked her to stick around on the team after Rogue helped them out in issue 4. This was also the same issue that Scarlet Witch joined, and of course was after both the events of M-Day and after Wanda had just been used as a pawn by Red Skull, who at this point was immensely powerful after stealing Xavier's brain and gaining his immense psionic power. Super comics! I know, stealing someone's brain, but here we are. So there was a lot of tension between these two women, but Rogue ultimately did decide to stay on the team. Now, not because Wanda asked her to though, and because she wanted to move on, but because she knew it would be what Professor X would have wanted, and because she basically didn't trust Wanda or her powers and wanted to stick around to keep an eye on her and to prevent her from making a giant mess of this whole situation, which she felt was all Wanda really knew how to do. Ouch. Poor Wanda. She can never catch a break. Number 3. Storm. Storm actually joined up after my number 2 was on the team. We'll talk about them in a minute, no spoilers, but see if you can guess, based on this timing, who is going to be next. Storm ended up joining during Bendis' run on Avengers in 2012 in issue 19 on that run. She was actually recommended to the team when Captain America attempted to re-recruit Black Panther. Now Black Panther said he just wasn't interested at the time, he just wasn't feeling it, and when Cap explained his reason for needing Black Panther as wanting friendly faces, T'Challa told him that what he thought the team needed actually was just more firepower. What Cap needed in his opinion was his wife, Storm. And so Storm answered the call, ended up joining the team for a time. She was even prominently featured on the cover for issue 21. I love this cover, it's just so cool. I think Storm should be on every team. Storm should lead every team, that's what I think. Number 2. Wolverine. Wolverine has been part of both the main Avengers team and the Avengers Unity Division, being as popular as a member of the X-Men as he is. I'm actually surprised it took Marvel as long as it did to include him on the team after the Avengers became this sort of ever-expanding team that just had so many branches and card-carrying former members as well as rotating members and honorary members. It just has become there's a lot of Avengers. Wolverine was invited to officially join the Avengers in the 2005 New Avengers series in issue number 6, after Cap and Iron Man had a brief discussion about whether or not Wolverine would be a suitable pick for the team. Steve was concerned that Wolverine was a murderer and therefore not suited, but Tony insisted, saying that he was their missing ingredient, the thing that their new team needed. And also he was like, he's not a murderer, he's a samurai. Or maybe a murderer and a samurai. I think you can be both. I don't know, can you be both? Is that dishonorable? Apologies to any samurai watching this. Number 1. Beast. We've seen Beast featured on the Secret Avengers team, but like me, you may have forgotten that he is essentially a core member of the Avengers, first becoming a probationary member in the Avengers Volume 1 in issue 137, and then gaining full membership in issue 151. Beast was likely the first X-Men member to become a full member of the main team, and although I tend to forget about it because he goes just so far back, he's essentially a core member, or he was a core member for quite a while. If you're wondering how exactly Beast ended up on the Avengers team when the X-Men and Hank's ties to them are so prominent, it was actually just some good timing in terms of what was going on in the comics. X-Men's original run actually ended in 1970 due to the series being cancelled. X-Men would return, but not until the mid-70s. Issue 137 of the Avengers, featuring Beast as a new member on probation, came out in July of 1975. For Hank, this was just after he'd been transformed into the big, bouncing blue beast that we have come to love today. X-Men returned a few months later in August, with Chris Claremont starting his run in issue 94 of X-Men. In other words, the X-Men team being defunct provided some freedom for Beast to join the Avengers, and writers kinda just liked the idea of him working on the team and probably just also loved his look, so it happened. And there was no X-Men at the time, so made sense. Seriously, there have been so many X-Men who have joined up on the Avengers, and even at times it's almost gone the other way around. Remember when Falcon was a proclaimed mutant by Professor X himself for like a hot second? It was believed for a brief moment in time that the reason he was actually so good with his falconry was because of a potential telepathic connection with his falcon, allowing him to communicate with his bird in a way that normal people couldn't. However, this idea was presented and then almost immediately scrapped and thrown out, so sadly Falcon was never offered a position on the X-Men team or fully confirmed confirmed as a mutant, but how cool would that have been?
Moving on to number 10 with Marrow. Of all the mutant powers out there, I think the one I would actively try to avoid having, if that was how it works, is the abilities of Marrow. Now Marrow's actual mutant ability is a hyper-accelerated metabolism, and it's through this that she's able to do what most people know her for: accelerated bone growth. She has the ability to control the growth, shape, and toughness of her bone structure, even having it protrude from her body and be used as weapons that she can remove. She can also use this ability to create a sort of armor. Now the only problem, and the reason I wouldn't want it, is that it hurts when she does it, and just imagine how much that would hurt, having your bones protrude from your body. No thank you, I'll pass. Luckily, she has a very rapid healing factor that also gives her enhanced strength, agility, and reflexes, and as a little bonus, this girl has 2 hearts, which allowed her to actually survive when she had one pulled out. Nice. Number 9, Pyro. St. John Allardyce is an Australian pyrokinetic mutant. He has the ability to control flame to grow in size and intensity, and to even take on any form he desires. He has used flame to create almost solid creations he refers to as, quote, the living flame, which have been in the shape of gigantic claws, birds, or even golems. The size, power, and intensity of the fire beings Pyro created were limited only by the extent of his imagination, the degree of his concentration, and his force of will. The only problem for Pyro is that he cannot generate flames spontaneously. He needs a source, which has been flamethrowers in his costume, other allies like Lockheed, or like a lighter or something. He could also be burnt by any fire that wasn't under his direct control. Now, he used his abilities mainly for evil deeds and crimes, but since his resurrection on Krakoa after he died due to the legacy virus, he has gone on to join Kate Pryde's Marauders and got this crazy skull tattoo on his face. It's kind of cool, but also I wouldn't do it, but you know, whatever. And at number 8 is Eunice the Untouchable. Now, I gotta say the force field abilities of wrestler, criminal, and villain Eunice the Untouchable definitely have some major drawbacks. The positives are great. His force field can withstand blows from the Incredible Hulk. He can project his force field to move objects. He could also use the shield to be untouchable, hence the name, opening it up to be able to grab things and eat. Now, the drawback would come in the fact that there have been multiple times where Eunice had his abilities increased, but to a point he couldn't even control his own abilities. At this time, his shield would literally close him off from everything. He couldn't grab things, eat food, or even breathe oxygen, which caused him to even pass out on one occasion, which luckily deactivated his powers, allowing him to actually live. Maybe if he used his powers for good, the writers would make him less self-destructive, but these are the cards you're dealt, bro. Guys, if you are indeed enjoying this video, do make sure to give it a little thumbs up. It's all you gotta do to let us know that you're enjoying what you're seeing. Thanks, nerds. Appreciate you. Number 7, Strife. You know, a lot of the characters on these lists have come into contact with the character of Strife. And while most people do know how powerful Strife is, I think not including him on this far into this series is kind of a sin. So, Strife is actually a clone, created by Mother Ascani and taken by Apocalypse, a clone of Nathan Summers, whom most of you know as Cable. Strife is essentially what Cable could have been had he not been infected by the techno-organic virus that he needs to use his powers to constantly keep at bay. Without that limitation, just like Cable, Strife is an Omega level telekinetic, at least that's what he calls himself, and it's stated that he is the 3rd most powerful one on Earth. He is able to do almost all of the other things telepaths of his level are capable of, plus powerful defensive and offensive telekinetic powers. But he is also cybernetically enhanced to have superhuman physical attributes thanks to Apocalypse. Strife is an incredibly powerful villain, not to be taken lightly at all. And at number 6 is Reaper. Pantu Hurageb has some interesting abilities to say the least. When he first appeared as part of Strife's Mutant Liberation Front, Reaper had the ability to generate a paralyzing effect on others that slowed their mobility and reaction times. He would usually use his scythe as a conduit for this ability, and it could even fully paralyze victims. But later, Reaper was enhanced by the Weapon X program, who gave him cybernetic prosthetic arms that could take different shapes, although you likely won't be surprised to hear they usually took the form of scythes that would still act as a conduit for his abilities. Unfortunately, Reaper did lose his abilities on M-Day, only to regain them again and then have them drained again. So he doesn't have any powers right now, I'm pretty sure. Or they're like diluted or something, I don't know. Number 5, Dragoness. For Tamara Kurtz, she was born a mutant directly because of the nuclear fallout caused by Hiroshima that her parents were exposed to, which is a different reason than a lot of other mutants, which
to me makes her more interesting. She only debuted in 1990, so she's only been around for about 30 years, but she has certainly established herself as a powerful mutant so far, displaying the ability of bioelectricity generation, kind of like an eel. No, I'm just kidding, she's not like an eel. She usually uses this electricity in electrical blasts and pyrotechnic flares, which she used as part of Stripe's Mutant Liberation Front. Since her introduction, she has also been seen as a vampire, after which she died and has since been revived, so she may or may not still be a vampire as well. I have no idea. Also, for a while she was equipped with these biotechnic pair of wings, which in the House of M were actually completely organic. I'd be stoked to see her show up again in comics and maybe expanded upon. I don't feel like there are many electricity-based mutants, so it'd be kinda cool. Number 4. Slab. A lot of you liked seeing Thumbelina in part 7 of this list, but what about her brother? Chris Anderson was a member of Mr. Sinister's Nasty Boys, and his life before this time isn't very well known. He has abilities similar to his sister. Where she can decrease in size, Slab has been shown to increase in size, getting stronger and more durable as he does so. Later on, he joined the Mutant Liberation Front, and even more recently than that, he has been seen on the mutant nation of Krakoa, where he went on to join up with Sword as part of their security division. Number 3. Vincente. He isn't really the most impressive of characters, although his abilities are certainly interesting, even if he usually gets defeated. On Earth 616, Vincente was a member of M-Plate's Hellions team. He had the ability to change his body from solid, liquid, or gas forms. Now, as a gas or liquid, he has been shown to be able to mix himself in with other materials and substances. So, for example, he once mixed himself in with some soup. Or, in the Age of Apocalypse world, he became wine inside a bottle. Over time, he further developed his abilities so that in his gas form, he could now render himself poisonous if inhaled. He was defeated twice, and since the last defeat, he hasn't really appeared more. Not yet at least, so let's cross our fingers and hope he shows up. Number 2. Skids. Sally Blevins, otherwise known as Skids, has a long history in Marvel Comics, being involved with many other mutant characters and teams, from Magneto and Charles Xavier to the Morlocks and Terminators. First introduced in X-Factor number 7 in August 1986, Skid's mutant ability is to create frictionless force fields that protect her from pretty much all physical attacks, falls, energy weapons, and projections. It can also allow her to kind of skate at a bit of speed given the frictionless nature of these force fields. She can also use her force fields to extend to others if she focuses. There was one really cool moment when she protected Avalon from breaking up upon re-entry to the Earth's atmosphere with help from Jean Grey. That was really cool. So if you ever check that out, check it out. That made no sense. Whatever. Let's move on. Number 1. Wind Dancer. Sophia Mantiga was increasingly isolated at a young age, being ignored by her father, Walter Barrett, after the death of her mother, and being told to not use her powers. Now, Sophia finally reached a breaking point. She entered into one of her father's grocery stores and let loose a hurricane inside of it. After she was arrested by police, Mr. Barrett was confronted by Danielle Moonstar, who saw Sophia on the news. She, persuaded him to enroll Sophia into the Xavier Institute. Sophia Mantiga has aerokinesis that she uses to amplify small vibrations in the air and draw far-off sounds to her ears. She can also disrupt the equilibrium of others with compressed air, lift herself off the ground for flight, create sharp forces of wind that can cut through material, and she even creates isolated whirlwinds or direct blasts of high-pressure air control. And she can manipulate the movement of air, but this is all before she was depowered. She has been a part of the Marauders, X Corporation, New Warriors, and New Mutants Squad.